Okay, I'm going to call to order the Fort Wayne Public Transportation Corporation Board of Directors meeting for Thursday, June 18, 2026. Roll call of members. We have all members present with the exception of Kyle Miller. Next item is the adoption of the agenda. We do have two items that we are adding, and they're actually going to be under new business. We are going to add a 9D and E. 9D being a contract award to Shambaugh for a backup generator, and then 9E is a contract award for the Remix service planning software. So I would accept motion to accept the agenda as amended. We have a motion by Sharice, a second by Nelson. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, same sign. Okay, we'll show that adopted as amended. Next item is the reading, correcting, and approval of minutes from previous meetings. We have the Planning and Development Committee minutes from May 19th, Executive Session and Regular Session Board of Directors meeting May 21st, and Executive Governance Committee meeting June 15th.
I think there's a correction on the meeting for the planning. It shows that I wasn't there. I think I was there at that meeting. For the minutes. Jesse was that one? Or was that the?
I think that's the external relations.
Okay, that was the external.
Yeah, this one was, I think it was just here.
Okay, I just want to make sure there wasn't that meeting. Yeah.
Move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion by motion by Nelson, second by Sharice. I'm looking at their reverse roles for the last one. I'm tongue-tied. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, same sign. I'll show those minutes approved as presented. Next item is board committee reports. First one, Executive Governance Committee. As indicated by the minutes on the packet, we did meet in executive session on Monday. We have another meeting scheduled for September 21st at 3:30. External stakeholder relations, Jesse.
Yeah, we haven't met since the last meeting, our last board meeting, and our next meeting is August 6th.
Thank you. Performance oversight and monitoring, Nelson.
No report. Next meeting.
Thank you. And planning and development, Sharice.
Our minutes from our May 19th meeting are in the packet. I think I reported on the meeting last time. And our next meeting is July 21st.
Thank you. Transit Planning Committee, John.
Yeah, the Transit Planning Committee met on June 8th. We received a presentation from Dan Basin from the city, although he was actually representing a cohort from this Leadership Fort Wayne program. They're doing a project to evaluate sidewalk conditions around the city. So we received a really interesting presentation about that. NERC announced that they are going to be kicking off their long-range plan project later this year, which aligns really well with our own long-range plan program, also happening at the same time. And other than that, the approved minutes from the TPC meeting back in February were included in the board packet. That's the report.
Okay, thank you, John. Next item is the general manager CEO report, John.
Well, I Hi, everybody. Happy June. It's hard to believe we're already in June. We have a full agenda today, so I'm going to keep my report short. Was very excited to see a letter from NDOT, a copy of which is included in your packet. This is a letter transferring $7 million in federal highway funding that has gone unused over to public transit. And so later tonight, when we do a presentation on how federal funding works, this will apply. You'll see a little bit of how this works. NERC approved that, so when the federal highway projects aren't completed, unspent funds can be flexed over to transit. So that's what's happening here. We'll talk a little bit more about that later tonight. Meanwhile, we will be releasing an RFP soon to conduct a facility condition and needs assessment. So looking at our facilities condition and what Citilink needs from its facilities in the future. And that will be used to identify and prioritize projects for which that $7 million can be programmed later on. The last thing is Jarrett Walker Associates, the contractor for our own long-range plan project, will be here the week of July 13th next month. We'll hopefully have them here at the board meeting and they can make a presentation or just at least have a chance to meet the board. Meanwhile, each of you received a copy of the Human Transit book. And so if you have a chance to over the next month, just take a look through this and become familiar with some of their concepts. This is really kind of like leading edge transit planning material right here. Really kind of top rate stuff. So it's a good book and I know Cherise would probably recommend it. I recommend it as well. And unless there are questions, that's my report this month.
Okay, thanks. Any questions for John? Okay, thank you, John. Next item is the CFO controller report. Latasha.
Good evening, everyone. Okay. Before I go over my report, we didn't put it in this packet, I don't think, but I did want to, if that is okay, just briefly highlight the budget calendar.
Sure.
I think it didn't make it to you. We have kicked off our budget planning for the 2027, and we'll get the detailed schedule in the packet for next month. We are starting to work with the managers as far as the different areas and our capital plan. That will be going on throughout this month. And then next month, we'll have a preliminary budget that we work with the CEO, and we'll probably go to the Planning and Development Committee. I believe that meeting is July 21st. And then in August, it'll come back, a draft to that committee, and we will be coming to the full board towards that for the August meeting for approval from our board. And then it will go on to the city in September for introduction, and we were looking towards an adoption in October. So just wanted to briefly highlight the budget calendar for the for 2027. And on to the May 2026 financials. These financials were used with the budget that we amended last month. So they may look a little bit different, but they do represent that we are still operating within our budget and the net earnings are positive before the unbudgeted items. Our total expenses were $7.6 million, and we were about $570,000 less than the budgeted expense of $8.2 million. We are still experiencing some cost savings from wages, also less vehicle repairs, purchase transportation, and pass-through costs for our subrecipient. I did notice a couple of things that may have stuck out to you. Our medical insurance did trend higher, which is not common, higher than our budget, and that is because of the mix of participants this year. As I spoke with our HR director, more have maybe family plans than in the past, and so it is trending a little higher than what we expected. And there may be some right sizing that we need to do within materials and supplies based off our current contract. I know it's like paratransit, some of the budgeted items, we are still trying to get our assumptions correct around that with the contract, the actual contract. Now, as far as compared to the prior year, we did have lower wages and fringes and materials and supplies, offset by our access and insurance costs. When it came to overall revenues, we were at 8.2 million, which was short of the budget by about 5% due to lower fixed route ridership and lower overall operating capital expenses. You will notice in the revenue that we are trending about 23% higher in operating revenue, and that's just mainly due to the lease income that we have. As far as our local contribution to capital projects, we were at about 590,000 compared to our prior year of 171,000. That's just due to more capital investment this year, more capital projects actually occurring. And our cash position at the end of May was 4.2 million. We did receive our property tax receipts, and that is the cause for that. And so if there are no questions on the financials, we do have the record of transmittals for May in the packet and our interim record of transmittals for review for June. Question?
Anyone would like to, if everyone's reviewed the materials, anyone has a motion? Move to approve the record of transmittals for the month of May and then transmittal for June 1st, June 19th.
I second that.
There's a motion by Nelson, and a second by Nina. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor of the approval of the record transmittals for May and also the interim record of transmittals for June 1st through June 19th, 2026, please signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, same sign. That is approved. Thank you, Latasha.
Thank you.
Next item is resolutions. We have none this month. Moving on to item 8, old business. We have the first item, discussion of the clean diesel versus hybrid buses.
Good evening. So this is obviously a continuation of the discussion that we started. This chair is very well. Discussion that we had last board meeting, and I think that This made it into your board packet, but I'll pass it around anyway in case somebody would like a hard copy. But several questions came up last month that required a little bit of additional information. And as promised, I put that together for tonight. So we've got a little PowerPoint here. It's very short because I just wanted to keep everything quick and to the point. But some of the main concerns that people have when they look at hybrids versus clean diesel is what about the environment? What about the emissions? And what a lot of people don't understand is that hybrids don't necessarily put out less emissions than a conventional clean diesel built in modern times. And the reason for this is because all diesel engines have to meet the same emissions standards. So they all have to put out a maximum of a certain amount of emissions. So if an engine exceeds that, it does not pass, it does not go into a highway vehicle. Additionally, the engines that are in hybrid buses are quite a bit smaller than what would be in a conventional bus. And because of that, they don't produce nearly as much heat. That heat is used to warm the cabin for the passengers in the wintertime. And so because of this, because they don't produce enough heat, the hybrid buses have to have a supplemental diesel heater to keep it warm in the cabin. And those diesel heaters consume a good bit of fuel per day. Conservative numbers are a half of a gallon to 2 gallons an hour, and sometimes more if it's even colder. And those heaters do not have emission systems on them. So it is just a dirty, old school diesel heater. So because of the standard for diesel engines, all have to be putting out no more than a certain amount of emissions, and because of the heater that is not equipped with any emissions system, the hybrids could actually, in some cases, be dirtier than a conventional clean diesel engine. So it's things that sometimes people don't hear about, but it is the reality of the bus world. So I put together kind of a scorecard, basically outlining the pros and cons of a diesel versus a hybrid. And I realized right away that it was almost impossible to compare each category one to the next because purchase costs might carry more weight to some people than fuel economy, or maintenance simplicity might carry more weight to some people than emissions output. So I tried to do it in a couple of different ways here. Basically, I scored them on a 1 through 5 scale, each line item. 1 being the worst and 5 being the best. And so when you add those all up, hybrids scored a 33 and diesels scored a 46. Because that's an impossible thing to quantify. If you can just look at simple wins. So simple wins is 7 for diesel and 4 for hybrid. It's an imperfect system, but it's about the best that we have to score on. Here's the last slide, and it shows a simple illustration of how many buses can Citilink purchase, one versus the other. So we already have 3 hybrid buses that are purchased with this grant fund. And if we make the switch, we'll be able to purchase a total of 7 more hybrids or a total of 10 more conventionals. So we'll end up with a total of 10 hybrids or a total of 13 conventionals. Obviously, more buses equals better, in my opinion. We'll be able to retire older fleets sooner, have more modern buses to replace 3 additional older buses. So the obvious better choice is the cheaper hybrid when you're looking at quantity. I guess that's the end of that. So basically, what our plan moving forward is to ask the FTA for permission to use this funding to purchase conventional clean diesel instead of the originally intended hybrid. Does anybody have any questions on any of this?
You expect any issues with them approving that?
Since we have never done something like this, I can't say that for sure. I know that I've heard several other transit agencies have successfully asked for permission to do that and succeeded. And it's actually the trend after there was approval for several that kind of started a wave of transit agencies doing exactly that. So I know that our Gillick rep informed me that they've had quite a few transit agencies do exactly this.
Thanks for putting this together. It's very helpful, and also, I mean, it doesn't hurt to ask, right? Because if they say no, then we know we can't even go that direction, right?
Right.
So at least we can consider that's an option for us. Asking.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, none of this can actually happen without their approval first.
Yeah.
But I do believe that it is the best route for Citilink to pursue that option.
Will any of this data assist you in that, in the request, or?
It definitely couldn't hurt. I've never went to the FDA to make an ask like this, so I'm not sure what the protocol typically is, but we could definitely put together a presentation with the ask.
Yeah, we'll provide them a business case for the decision, and I think we can use a lot of this data, as well as some of Jason's slides to make a case with FTA. Yeah. They're typically receptive, although it takes some time. What's happening in our industry now is that this particular pot of funding, low and zero emission buses, is being repurposed for standard diesel buses across the industry. And it just has to do with exactly these points, that the emissions for a hybrid bus are really about the same as a diesel bus. The perception is a different story, and so community perception is important. There's a public relations value in the story that surrounds hybrid buses, but in terms of the practical reality of reduction in emissions, it's negligible.
Just a bit of anecdotal information. I was speaking with our Allison technician that we used here in town just today and over the last few days. I shared this information with him, and he was very much on board with that plan because of the excessive downtime that other transit agencies have seen with these hybrids. Some of his colleagues spend nearly their entire work week working on only hybrid buses for transit agencies, just because there's such a backlog of issues. And according to him, it seems that Allison is struggling to resolve these. And even though they've been out for several years, they're still experiencing quite a few issues with the system. Once again, as anecdotal, we haven't experienced it personally yet because we don't have any of these in service yet. But it's coming from a pretty reliable source.
Thank you.
All right, if anybody has any questions moving forward, please feel free to reach out.
Okay, next item, don't go anywhere yet because you're up again. So we have an action item award the design construction contract for replacement of underground storage.
I'm sorry, Connor, did you want to take a vote for the authority to make some requests to the MTA, or feel like that's an action item?
I'm not sure it's necessary, but if you all wish, that's up to you.
I think what we probably do is talk to the FTA first and bring that back.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
Next, back to our agenda, award design and construction contract for replacement underground storage tanks, and this is the one that we've been working on a long time, so it'd be nice to have this if we
Yeah,
can approve it, nice
as,
to have some progress.
as most of you probably know, this has been an ongoing project for over 3 years now. And it is finally starting to get close to the finish line. We had, just a quick recap, we've got several underground fuel storage tanks on the property. They were put in the early 90s. They're very much past their useful life. And we have been receiving several findings from the IDEM, Indiana Department of Natural Resources. Every time we have them inspected, they find things that need attention. They're getting costly to maintain, and there is risk of a release whenever you have tanks that are this old. So for the last several years, we've been working towards removal and replacement of these tanks. We finally were able to put an RFP out. We received grant funding. That was back in 2023, is that right? And received grant funding for the project. We were finally able to put an RFP on the street, and we did receive 2 proposals from 2 separate companies. Because of the type of procurement this is, we basically had to use a qualifications-based procurement approach to it, meaning that we looked through their proposals, we decided which company we felt was most qualified to do the work, and then we went into negotiations on price and adjustments of scope of work. So doing that, we made several adjustments to the scope based on the different tank options, based on local and state regulations on distance in which you can space different types of tanks. And we ended up agreeing to a proposal that would remove and replace all of the tanks for a total of $870,000. So what we're asking the board is for approval to award a contract to Allied Hot to remove and replace our existing underground storage tanks with above-ground storage tanks for a total of $870,000. There are a few other caveats with that. We could end up finding additional expense if there is contamination found. We will not know that until after the ground is broken and they start to remove the tanks. That's the only way we'll really know. And because of that, we have opted to postpone the construction of the overhead canopy over the fuel tanks until after we know if that money will need to be spent for additional remediation. The good thing is if we do find additional costs because of release, there is an ELTF program that will pay for up to 50% of those costs. So if there's $100,000 worth of remediation, they'll pay up to $50,000 of that. So the ask is that the board approves that we award a contract to Allied Hot for this project.
I don't know if I missed this, but did you receive other proposals? Was there a huge difference in the, in the amount that they're saying they would need to do this project?
So we received one other proposal, and we do not look at the pricing because of the way that we have to do this award. We don't look at pricing until after we decide who is the most qualified.
Oh, okay.
So we only received pricing or only negotiated pricing with the one company.
Okay.
Yeah, that's an unusual, but whenever you use federal funds to award an architecture or an engineering contract, it's a qualifications-based award. And so this is under the Federal Brooks Act. So a lot of learning in our organization about this.
Now he needs a motion.
Move to approve the award design construction contract for replacing underground storage tanks. As presented in the recommendation.
We have a motion by Sharice, a second by Nelson. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, same sign. So that is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is authorizing the public uses of Citilink facilities policy and procedure.
So this is the policy that we talked about last month. There were two main concerns that were brought up. And so what we've done in the last month is we essentially circulated the policy to several staff members, got some feedback. And what we decided to do based on comments last month is we deleted the reference to personal deliveries. I know that was a concern that we talked about. So that's just been removed completely. The idea is that if we do decide to address that at a later date, it would just be a separate policy. That way it takes that issue and concern off the table. The other thing that we talked about was government functions. So it actually already covered government functions at the bottom of page 1. But what we added was or government sanctioned uses to try to make sure that we're covering those other government events that we were discussing at the last meeting. I really think the only other change, I think it was Pam brought up the fact that Fort for Fitness isn't necessarily on a Sunday, so we changed that event to Open Streets, which is a Sunday event that would be when Citilink is closed for business. Other than that, I think it's largely unchanged, if not completely unchanged from last time, but that's what we did to address the two concerns that were raised last time. And Connor, I think you want to, if you have any questions, since I didn't know that. I'm happy to rehash
I have
anything.
none. We initially talked about this, I think, in the middle, and then we went to the meeting last night, so I'm fairly familiar with it. Since you worked on it, not really sure I have full bake. So any questions regarding this and the changes that were made? I know there was, I think from what John indicated, there was quite a robust discussion last month. It appears those areas have been addressed, so. If there are any questions, or if not, then we'll ask to make a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Nelson, a second by Nina. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor of adoption, please signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, same sign. Okay, we will show that adopted. Thank you for all the work on it. Moving on to new business, we have the review of the 2025 operating and financial data.
Well, I decided to move up here, just so that I can look at the slides together with you. We're going to move through two presentations tonight that are really designed just to provide more information to the board about our operations for 2025, first looking back, and then the second presentation is dealing with federal funding and how we use it at Citilink. So we just looked at the financial audit last year, and when the financial audit is completed, we submit a lot of operating and financial data to the FTA, in what's called the NTB report. And so sometimes you'll hear us say the NTB. And by the way, Melissa Shaw, newly on board with Citilink, has created a document that we should share with you. Transit acronyms. It's 17 pages in length. And we keep adding to it.
Yay.
Yeah.
Good
The
job.
NTD, yeah, the NTD stands for the National Transit Database. It was established by Congress way back in 1974. All public transit agencies across the nation file their reports annually It's really a repository of operating and financial data for transit agencies across the nation. And the feds use it for calculating formula funds. And so if you're curious and you want to check it out, you can go to this website and learn more about the NTD. But here's just a quick overview of what's tracked. So, and again, we're going to get into acronym soup here. Unlinked passenger trips, UPT, that's ridership. Passenger miles traveled, which is the total number of total number of miles that passengers travel on transit across the whole system. It's a statistical measure, so it tries to calculate how many passenger miles were traveled across the system, hours and miles. Financials, including operating expense, revenue, and subsidies. We have to provide vehicle inventories and asset inventories. There's a module that deals with safety and security. But basically, the NTD, what's useful about it as a transit manager is that you can use it for peer comparisons. So you can see how we're doing in measuring efficiency along with our peers. So every month we file an NTD report on operations and on safety and security data. And then at the end of the fiscal year, we file an annual report. It's due by April 30th. And I can tell you it takes a number of hours to get this report done. It is a complicated report to file. Pam Schieber files all the operating data. Jason Traber files asset data on vehicles. And then Latasha Thompson has a lot of reporting to be related to our financial reports. So it's a big effort. We file it by April 30th. Their NTD analyst usually gets back to us with issues to correct. Finally submitted in May, and then just this week we received word that the 2025 report has been closed out, which means we're good, we're finished. So well done, team. But if you ever have a chance to go online, you want to look at it, we can show you the report. Okay, but it looks kind of like this. So I want to dive kind of into our data for 2025. The first data table here shows performance by mode. This is a ridership comparison, so ridership versus miles, rides per mile, revenue hours, rides per hour. Across our system, our 2025 ridership was just shy of 1.4 million rides in total. We carried an average of 0.8 passengers per mile, or 10.95 rides per hour. So this is a way you can look at efficiency. 0.8 rides per mile is a little low compared to our peers. And so remember that we made some efficiency improvements earlier this year in 2026 by reducing service that was ineffective. We should see that number go up for the 2026 report. Expense by mode. Well, let me go back here for just a moment. I want to point out that for all of last year, you'll remember we directly operated fixed route bus service and our access paratransit, except for 2 weeks of the year. We outsourced paratransit as of December 15th. And so these numbers are the purchased transportation that we did with Tidewater. So you can see, kind of how their service compared to ours. Expense by mode, and this is where I want to highlight this. You can see immediately that for 2 weeks, but it's a good indicator for where we're going. The expense per hour was much lower for our contracted operation compared to our directly operated service. So our expense per hour for directly operated access was $128.41, and Tidewater operated it for $108.98. But that's only 2 weeks of the year, so we'll wait to make a final judgment until we see how we do this year. But across the system, our total expense per revenue mile was $10, and our total expense per revenue hour was $141.61. Now, we also look in the NTD report not only at operating costs, but at overhead costs. So overhead includes administration and facilities. So costs for our admin team. And so our overhead expense was $4.3 million out of $17.9 total million, or about 30% power. Again, that changes by the mode, it varies. You can see that our overhead actually was a little higher for the purchase transportation, in part because of staffing that we still have on board related to managing that service. So we'll see how it settles. But how does Citilink compare in terms of our overhead rate with our peers? These are other transit agencies in the state of Indiana: Indianapolis, Bloomington, Lafayette, and South Bend. This is Fort Wayne here. We're at 24%. 24% of total expense comes from overhead. Our overhead is below the state average of 26%, but second highest among some of our peers, tying with Bloomington's. Indianapolis really sort of throws the data off whack because their overhead rate is higher at 35%. This slide is really interesting. This is the total expense per rider for 2025 by mode. So the blue line is our fixed route service, and then the orange line is our access service. So for fixed route service, ridership dropped from 2024 to 2025. And that's why you see the cost per ride going up, right? So our costs were flat relatively, but lower ridership means cost per ride went up. For access, our directly operated expense was $57.99, which was kind of flat with the year prior, actually down slightly. But then our contracted service delivered a lower cost per rider of $51.03. So we saved about $7 a trip by outsourcing. Okay, now we've been talking about our ridership, and ridership, you see month to month that it's declining from last year's reporting, right? But I want to kind of step back and talk about how overall Citilink is showing a growing recovery trend in our ridership. Yeah, so last year the last 2 years, we had some data errors. The APC system that tracks our ridership, we discovered that several stops were being counted multiple times. Is that correct, Pam? Is that sort of it in a high level? So we got that fixed. That's the past. We can't go back and change that ridership report because the MTV is locked in, right? But if you look at the overall trend, it's still showing that we have a slow post-pandemic recovery. Let's talk a little bit about capital. Citilink invested in our infrastructure, and the goal here really is maintaining a state of good repair for facilities and vehicles. Last year, we contributed a total of $2.5 million for capital assets, and they included things like buildings and revenue vehicles and fare collection systems, communication systems, and other. So Citilink is investing in our assets. I want to talk a little bit about safety and security reporting. This is the first time I think that this is coming to the board. We track what are called incidents and incidents. And there's a federal threshold that says if we have an accident by which somebody needs to be removed from the scene with an ambulance, or a vehicle needs to be towed from the scene, that's considered a reportable accident. And so for 2025, we had, here's the data. There were 5 such events. We also have to report injuries and fatalities. We had 10 injuries and 1 fatality in 2025. So the other piece that the federal, and I just want to say, the fatality was, horrible. Thankfully, that's very rare. Like, we don't see that typically for years and years will go by before there's a fatal accident, but it can and does happen. So 16 accidents in total met the reporting standard. We also measure assaults against transit workers. This is newly enrolled legislation that wants transit authorities to measure assaults. Because across the nation, the safety of transit workers is becoming increasingly a challenge. Even since the pandemic, assaults against transit workers has been on the rise.
May I have your attention, please? Please join us in the theater at 6 p.m. for Wendy and DB. A Grammy-nominated and award-winning duo, they have pioneered a blues-inspired space in children's music. With a fresh spin on blues and pop songs about nature, animals, love, community, science, and themes that will get the whole family excited, Wendy and DB spread positive messages with their beautifully blended voices, ukulele, guitar, and percussion. Again, please join us for a performance at 6 p.m. in the theater for Wendy and DB.
Okay, we have 14
Yeah,
minutes.
you better hurry up.
I do want to really focus on this topic. It's a serious concern. Assault, 7 assaults. Is that good or bad? So one of the things I'd like to do is have our chief safety officer bring you a presentation next month to talk about what defines a transit worker assaults and what are the mitigations that we've been putting in place through our safety committee that involves labor and management. One of the big ones is when we buy a new bus, we install a safety barrier now between the driver. And so those are doing a lot to reduce assaults. We also have to do additional training with our frontline folks. You know, they cannot escalate conflicts because they are at risk. And at times, you know, we go around a little bit with the union on this. It's increasingly serious that our drivers treat the public that we serve with courtesy and respect in every situation. And so ATU International is pushing hard on assaults against transit workers. They have gotten a lot of new regulations that bring unions to the table in these discussions. And so our own local union should not then try to argue that it's safe to run a red light or that it's acceptable for an escalated conflict to result in an assault against one of our employees. So you can see that we're really trying to work hard here to get the union to come alongside of management in underscoring the urgency and importance of addressing these concerns. So more information to bring to you on that. I did have some historical data. So just so you can see, the assaults are right here. So we had 13 in 2024, 8 in 2023. So you can see it's gone up and down. Thankfully, none of the assaults that we've had have resulted in serious injury. These are things like a passenger throwing something at a driver or spitting at a driver, or even verbal assaults, making a physical threat. Okay. So some initial conclusions. Yeah, you know, access costs appear to be lower, so we achieved that. I think fixed route costs per rider are going to flatten with growing ridership. So, you know, consolidation of lower performing services should push average ridership higher per hour in our reporting this year. We do need to continue to constrain overhead costs. That's a concern. We have a backlog of facilities-related investments that are necessary, and so we're going to see capital contributions grow. And then, of course, I want to bring greater visibility to you all as board members to the issues of safety and security. Okay, are there any questions on that presentation? If you'd like, then we can move right on to the next one. We have 11 minutes until the
Overview of Citilink's federal funding.
Can I ask a quick question, John?
Yeah.
Without, how much for 23-24's NTP ridership history, where we had some duplication, right? I mean, how much are you really talking?
So if we were to go back to that slide, which we won't do, but Pam, do you know that the amount is about 12 to 15% of over-reported ridership? Yeah. So I think if you look at our ridership compared to 2022, you'll see that that rate of increase is trending more, you know, along the lines that I just showed you in the chart.
I'm just wondering how much is overstating the trend, so I can understand my line. So 15 to 20%, so budget.
That's one of those things that needs explaining as we go out and do presentations in the community. That ridership decline over year is due to the data issue. And so we actually are still showing a growth trend.
What was the number of you said it was?
15%. It did a jump from 22 to 23, and then we saw the error in the adjustment.
Okay, so from here we'll jump right on into federal funding. This has been interesting because I know as I've served on the board that we use our lingo and we talk about federal programs. And so it can be confusing. People don't always understand it. But understanding federal funding is going to be of key importance to board members and leadership staff. Given that Citilink brings a significant amount of federal funding back to Greater Fort Wayne. And so that's the story that we need to tell, that federal investment that comes through transportation investments that Citilink makes multiplies the local investments that are made by taxpayers. As a case in point, for our operating budget for 2026, this year's budget, 32% of our operating budget comes from federal sources. And then the remaining comes from other sources like local taxes, state contributions, and other assistance, fair revenue and operating revenue. So 32% of our operating budget is federally assisted. These are the sources of federal funds that are included in the operating budget. And just as a case in point, if you look at Latasha's monthly statement of net earnings, you'll see revenues posted along each of these sections of federal funding. And so you'll notice when we talk about federal funding, you'll hear us say section so-and-so. What we're referring to there is really the reference to the section of law for which the federal funding is authorized. So we'll say 49 United States Code, section 5307. So section 5307 is the urbanized formula. And what that is, it's available to cities larger than 50,000 in population. It's a federal formula that can be used for either operating or capital funds. So it's also sometimes referenced as the flexible formula. We are limited by federal law in terms of how much of that annual apportionment we can use for operating assistance. The rest has to go to capital. You've heard us talk about section 5310. That particular pot of money is for seniors and people with disabilities. Citilink uses some of that funding for administrating the 5310 program, and then also to support some of our operations. But we passed most of it through to the local nonprofit human services sector, CTN and Easter Seals most recently. And then 5339, section 5339 is known as the bus and bus facilities program. And so we have a formula apportionment annually that we use for capital assistance to improve either buses, to buy buses, or to improve our facilities. In our capital budget, 82% of our $6.2 million capital budget comes from federal sources. So federally speaking, typically what you have to do on the capital side is it's 80% federal funding, 20% local share. But some programs have a lower local share. So for example, the Lono grant that we use to buy buses, which is right here, has a 15% local match, and the federal funding provides 85% of the cost of the bus. So across the capital budget, it's 82% federal, 18% in local tax funding. But what's important to know is that not only are we utilizing formula funds, which are awarded to Citilink every year in the formula, we're competing for discretionary funds. And those discretionary dollars are competitive grants for which we have to write an application, and compete with our industry for. And we've been successful at winning federal discretionary grants. In our capital budget, this is our capital budget for 2026 as it was adopted. You can see here the federal share comes up to 82%. It's mostly Section 5307 and 5339 funding. So I included in the packet a report from Congress on all the federal programs. It's also linked in my slide deck, but this is kind of a high-level look at all public transportation funding in the United States. This is as authorized in the Infrastructure and Jobs Act, otherwise known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill, which expires in September of this year. But there's Section 5307, which we've been talking about. 5337 is a state of good repair pot only for rail and fixed guideway systems. So if we operated bus rapid transit in a dedicated lane, we could access that funding. It's not available to us today. The Capital Investment Grants Program, 5309, is for large-scale bus rapid transit and rail projects. The 5339, discretionary low and no emission program, is unlikely to be renewed again by Congress, given the current administration's objectives. Section 5311 is rural formula funding. Today, we're not eligible for that. In Indiana, the state of Indiana receives 5311 funding and distributes it across the state. And so I've initiated a conversation with them about using these funds for our van pool program. So for regional service in rural areas, van pools could work. And then last but not least, the 5310 program. Other are all kinds of other programs that federal transit funds, including ferry boat programs and other kind of unusual modes of transportation. So how are federal dollars programmed? In the United States, Congress requires that all federal transportation funding for roads, bridges, highways, aviation, and transit are regionally coordinated. And they've identified organizations that are called Metropolitan Planning Organizations, or NPOs. So there's another acronym for the list. An NPO is an entity that Congress requires to program and prioritize federal projects. Here in Greater Fort Wayne, the Northeast Indiana Regional Coordinating Council, or NERC, is our region's NPO. And so every month we go to a meeting there. It's called the Urban Transportation Advisory Board, or UTAB. And basically they coordinate all of the federal funded projects. And so we're at the table and we're there to get our projects through their process for approval. If you saw the press last week, NERC hosted a public meeting where they were receiving community feedback on their program of projects. This is what they were talking about, is their 2026 program, and some of us went and attended that. NERC helps us. They also host the Transportation Planning Committee, the TPC, which I reported on earlier, and they produce a long-range transportation plan. They coordinate with us on asset management to provide other services. But I want to go back here. Local approval, projects are listed in what's called the Transportation Improvement Program, or the TIP. And so sometimes you'll hear us say is the federal project in a TIP? Yes, it's in the TIP. That's a schedule of federal awards for all modes of transportation for a 5-year window of time. And so approved projects have to be listed in that TIP then in order to go from the local TIP to the state TIP. So NDOT is responsible to take TIPs from all over the state and merge them together in one statewide program. And then they send that STIP to the USDOT either for obligation on the highway side or on the transit side. And so this is really the process. This takes about a year to work through this process. But when we apply for the funds, they have to be obligated in the local tip and the state tip. Okay, ready with me so far? All right, so once we receive notice that it's in the STIP, then we go into a federal system where, by the way, there's a web-based tool that we use for managing the MTD report, the safety security report, and then TRAMS, which is the Transit Award Management System. This is how we manage grants, federal grants, using the TRAMS system. If you ever would like to see a demo of it, Latasha or I can show you. It's kind of a chance to nerd out. But this is an example. This is a grant in TRAMS. It is our Lono Award for hybrid buses. So this is the grant that we would need to go in and amend if FTA will allow us to utilize this for diesel buses. And so this is what it looks like. It takes a lot of time to put these together. But if you ever have curiosity about our grants, we would be happy to share with you copies of the grant documents. I went in just for kicks to see where we are with our federal funding. This is as of June 9th. We currently have $14.1 million in all of our active federal grants. So these are known as unliquidated balances. Now, it's important to know that these are obligations of the federal government to Citilink. This is not money in the bank, okay? Because the federal government is still holding those funds, and we're only able to draw them through making reimbursement after an expense is made, okay? So that's why you don't see this as an account receivable on our financial statements. It's only an obligation of the federal government to Citilink. It's not a cash receipt yet. But 14.1 million exists in funds. We have funds going back to the CARES Act, which is COVID funding, $200,000. It's going to be used for the generator project that was just approved, and the remaining amount towards an underground fuel storage tank. So these grants can be in place for several years. We have to provide quarterly reports and keep them active by adjusting the period of performance for the grants. So, and this is important to know, federal grant dollars don't really expire on the transit side. And so we can go in, they cannot be de-obligated once the federal government has committed them. The Supreme Court proved that to be true with the current administration that went after some of these obligated grants, particularly in the Department of Education. But once it's obligated, it's set aside for us. We provide milestone progress and financial reports each quarter. And Latasha and Patrick, who's our project coordinator, spends a lot of time paying attention to those period of performance timelines in each project and each grant, so that we don't accidentally see a grant go into expiration. Okay, so when a project is complete or you're in process, when we expend funds, like if we buy buses and we write the check, you guys approve the check, we'll cut the check, and then we will draw the funds, typically for a large procurement or a large expense like a bus. We'll draw the funds down using what's called the ECHO system. Latasha prepares an ECHO drawdown. I review it as a secondary review. And then typically we will receive the funds in our bank accounts within 24 hours of the drawdown. We can only hold them for 3 days. They have to be expended within 3 days. Okay. All right, so, okay, now I want to step back a little bit to talk about our financial reporting. The financial reporting that Latasha does in our monthly board packet, the annual audit that you see. Federal funds are posted on the statement of net earnings as a monthly accrual amount based upon the budgeted level. But that doesn't mean that we're doing an ECHO drawdown each month to put the cash into our accounts. We draw the cash as needed to cover costs, and then it's trued up at the end of the year. Capital investments they don't show up in the operating budget, they show up on the balance sheet. So when we buy a bus or we make an improvement to a facility, you typically don't see an operating expense flowing through the financials. I'll just leave it where it is, it's telling me to stop. So what you see instead is on the annual audited financials, you'll see investment in assets. There's a schedule of expenditures of federal awards, and then you'll see depreciation expense posted to the financials. So when you buy a bus that's going to run for 15 years, you take the price of that bus and divide it by the number of years of its useful life and its expenses depreciation. I'm going to leave it there unless you have questions. I do want to say that there's another slide up in the presentation that shows you additional resources to look at. And so if you have a chance and you want to go deeper on this topic, there are plenty of resources available, and the staff and I are certainly available to assist you with any questions that you have. Any questions before we wrap for today's presentation?
I think I'll follow up with a few questions, but not now.
Okay,
This was good information.
thanks.
Yeah.
This is helpful. It's designed to be a quick primer to federal funding. It's complex, but it can be simple. I mean, if you look at it at a high level, it's simple. Some details that are complicated. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Okay, next item is insights from APTA Emerging Leaders Program.
I'll make it quick. I type mine out. I'm not as smooth as John yet. We're good though. Last June, I traveled to San Francisco to join 35 other classmates from all over the country, as well as Canada. When I applied for this program, I never thought I had a real shot at the opportunity, and after reading everyone's biographies after I was accepted, I thought that they made a mistake by allowing me in the program. I was in the same room with 2 people with doctorates, multiple people with master's degrees, and multiple people who graduated from Ivy League schools. They were joining from places like Caltrain and BART from the Bay Area, Sound Transit in Seattle, RTA in Cleveland, MTA in Minneapolis, and APTA itself. We were broken into capstone project groups of 6, and just in my group, I was joined by Bridget from Transit App, Aurora from the Toronto Transit Commission, Lori from Charlotte Area Transit, Sipte, who is now with MBTA in Boston, and Cinna from MTA in New York City. As you can see, I was rubbing elbows with an impressive group of people, and I felt the imposter syndrome immediately. We had wonderful sessions on emotional intelligence, strength-based leadership guidance based off of our EQ or emotional intelligence results, enhancing our networking skills. We all did introductory presentations to kind of teach each other about or tell each other about ourselves. We had a tour of the cable car facilities at SFMTA, and we started meeting and bonding with our individual capstone groups. Fast forward in September, I traveled to Boston, where we continued to bond, network, hear from industry leaders, learn to improve our presentation skills, and most importantly for me, we learned how to lead through our struggles. I really had a humbling experience at this session. It was quite the opportunity to rub elbows with people like the chief of Arlington Transit, the recently retired COO from PRT in Pittsburgh, who I met through this program and really became a cheerleader for me and was really helpful in a lot of things that I did in the last year. So that was a nice little bonus. And I also met the CEO of TriMet in Portland, just to name a few. Every capstone project group was assigned 3 national mentors. Our group was assigned Tricia Chastanet, a senior planner from Connecticut DOT, Christina Belmont, the VP of marketing at SDI Presence, which is like an IT firm that works with a lot of transit agencies and so forth, and Chris Valentine, who's the chief officer of surface transport at SEPTA in Philadelphia. We didn't get to meet with him as much. As you may know, SEPTA went through a really rough year, and so he was pretty busy and didn't get to meet with us too much, but the other 2 were very helpful. Along with our national mentors, we were to get a personal mentor as well. John was able to connect me with Brian Smith, who is the CEO of City Bus in Lafayette. I met monthly with Brian, and we met almost monthly with the national mentors. We also had a class rep assigned to us from the previous year, and we had Eric Mumm, who is from Kinley Horns and lives in the Bay Area. He was instrumental in getting our capstone project across the finish line and helped us with any bumps along the way. Our group decided to do our capstone project entitled Equity in Motion and Planning with Cognitive Disabilities in Mind. We released a survey in January and heard from 5,274 riders across 12 cities in North America. 87% of those who responded identified as neurodivergent or having cognitive disabilities. We worked on the capstone project weekly and presented to 120 people on a Zoom session in May. I can email you a copy of that presentation. I was going to print it out, but it's kind of lengthy. I didn't want to waste that much paper, so I'd be happy to email it to you. And eventually you'll be able to watch the Zoom presentations on the APTA-U's website as well. They're not up yet. I checked this morning. I think they just got last year's up, honestly. But anyway, we also presented a condensed presentation at the Access Committee meeting in Salt Lake City last month. My favorite capstone project outside of my groups was called Every Stop Counts, which focused on addressing the lack of consistency, accessibility, equity, and passenger dignity of the common North American bus stop. This particular session will be one that I encourage all of you to watch when they get uploaded to the APTA website. Additionally, all 35 of us did individual presentations throughout the year on a big project we recently worked on. I presented in March and, of course, presented about our recent route changes that we have gone through. We graduated while in Salt Lake City, and it was quite the emotional experience. This group of people lifted me up when I was truly struggling. Last year was very hard for me. I never expected to be in a situation where my decisions could potentially hurt people. The route changes, the thought of losing drivers to a subcontractor, or having to lay them off weighed on me immensely. I don't mean to put anyone in this room down or discount their importance to me in my career thus far, but I know without APTA Emerging Leaders, I would not have survived my year at Citilink last year. They kept me focused, inspired, and were helpful in my stumbling blocks along the way. I missed several of our meetings in October, November, and early December due to having to be on the road as a driver or as a supervisor because the actual supervisors were driving. My group was so understanding and forgiving during this tough stretch that we went through at the end of the year. Additionally, while in Salt Lake City, I was elected as one of the 3 class representatives to work with the incoming class. I will be traveling to Baltimore next Wednesday for the kickoff session and will hopefully help this new class as others have helped me this past year. I want to thank Nadine for helping me with the application process, John, Pam, and Latasha for greenlighting the cost, and Dr. Felicia with helping me with all of the travel arrangements. This was a life-changing experience and altered my career trajectory in a good way. Citilink allowed me to do this program during a rocky time at our company, and that is not lost on me. I'm very grateful for this investment in me, and I hope we will allow others to go through the Emerging Leaders program as well as Leadership APTA. I believe the more people we send, the more we will understand how to better serve Fort Wayne and ultimately know what to dream and plan for. Thanks.
Good job. Congratulations.
Yes, thank you. It's going to be a great program. Okay, next item is the new, the amended item, the addition 9D, the contract award to Shamball for the backup generator with the CARES fund that John alluded to in his presentation earlier.
Jason, if you don't mind, I'll just jump in here since I've got the detail. Yeah, thank you. We handed out the bid. We're asking the board to award $97,845 for the generator installation. It's funded at 100% with CARES Act funding. We will need to work with legal to make sure we get legal federal terms and conditions onto the contract. But that's our request.
How much did you take? I was looking here, is it
It's $97,845.
It's highlighted on the back.
Yeah.
okay, all right, thank you.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Sharice, second by Raleigh. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor of approval, please signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, same sign. Okay, that is approved. Next item, last item under new business, sorry, is the award for the Remix service planning software.
So what we're asking the board to do tonight is to authorize 2.5 years of software licenses for a program called Remix. Remix is what we use to plan our fixed route service and our on-demand microtransit services. We bought it, 2 years ago? And so that rate, $102,775, is an expense to be paid out of the operating budget as annual costs of $41,600 this year, $42,800 next year, and then $20,212 in 2028 for a half-year license. The reason for that half-year license is to try to get Remix's renewal aligned with our VIA software renewal. VIA, is our software for scheduling paratransit service. Remix and VIA are the same company. VIA bought Remix, I think, 3 years ago.
Before we signed our contract.
Yeah. It used to be its own standalone company.
Yeah.
This was in our budget.
This is a reduced, the other option is to just commit ourselves to 1 year, but it was $4,000 higher per year. So this is a commitment we can make for 2.5 years with locked in price.
You're happy with the
Yeah, we love the software. All the service changes that we made this year, and then we're planning a Remix, and it gives us, you can add layers of information like census data or ridership or bus stop locations, and so it's an awesome tool.
This isn't what we were using when we got the data that was off, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, the Remix system. Yeah. When we got the data off of.
The ridership. That was
Oh no, that's a different system.
different system.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What was that?
The automated passenger numbers.
Okay.
That's a different software. I'm sorry.
So what does this one do?
It's a planning tool, so you can use it to map fixed route services or on-demand services. There's a scheduling module that produces work blocks for drivers, so Matt's using that to design the schedule. It's kind of an all-inclusive planning tool. Yeah. We can demonstrate it for you sometime if you want.
What's nice too is that NERD has access to that tool as well, so that they can also have access to the data and the work that we do with them. All right, I'll move to
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion by Raleigh, a second by Nelson. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor of approval, please signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, same sign. Show that is approved. Thank you. Next item, communications from the public. My understanding is there's nothing that's been timely filed or filed in any event. Board of Directors, open discussion. Jesse, let's make this happen. We thought you had a treat.
There's some great information in this one.
Thank you.
It kind of gives us clarity on financing and grants and how they work. So thank you.
If you'd like to, we're happy to answer any question that you'd like. And I think it's amazing that you all now know what an NPO is, so we say that.
Or NERD.
Or NERF. That's another fun way.
And while we were in the meeting, Melissa sent her summary out. I saw it come through. So she said there's a quiz in a few months. So study up. Okay, we will show the meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.